Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining. This is Ray here. We're going to be talking about, we're actually going to be critiquing others' photos. We had a bunch of users submit some photos, and I think we have a good number of them to go through, and hopefully it's going to be nice and informative. I got my co host Scott Keys here,
Hey, hey.
and I think there's not too much to kind of intro on this one, so we're going to kind of just get right into it. So I'm going to give you Scott's screen here, and here we go. I'm going to hand it right off to Scott. He's going to get started. He's going through a couple photos. I think he's got one he wanted to get started with, and I'll hand it over to him.
All right, so we hope you like this concept. So we asked for some photos to be submitted. We got a pretty good number. I think we're going to try to do about 10 each, maybe a little bit more if we have time. At the end, let us know if you like the concept, and we can certainly continue to do it again. So here's the first photo. So I'm going to show you the photo that was submitted as it is, and then if there was any editing or anything that I thought could be done. I think Ray and I each took a few pictures, and just to visually demonstrate, we dropped it over to Photoshop, made a couple changes. So first image here is from Daniel Wakefield. It's a really great picture. I think I've actually seen this before. We also do a Facebook page for photo critique, wildlife photography critique, and I think Daniel had submitted this, and at the time I really liked it. So let me just go over what I like about it first of all. So composition is great. I really love. I'm going to drop this into Photoshop in a minute and show you, but he really utilizes a couple of vertical elements here and a couple of horizontal elements. He's got the eye sitting right in a sweet spot here at an intersection on the third. Couple elements here that I like. The tail is right here, straight up and down. And the lighting's really good. So obviously it was taken at night. Settings are up in the top corner. I don't know if you can see it, but he's showing 1/250th of a second at 14. And overall, love this image. So a couple things that I nitpicked on this one though. So I'm going to pop up the Photoshop version. So when I did the edit to this, I just adjusted the horizontal a little bit. So I actually rotated it a hair. One of the features I like is this tail, but it's got a blade of grass going right through it. I would love for that not to be there. If this was a photo, and we'll talk a little bit about contest entries. If this was a contest entry, there's not really much you can do about it. If this was a print that I was trying to sell, and I certainly think this is the kind of print you could either print and hang on your wall or try to sell, I would probably edit that blade of grass out. Right at the top, it's a little distracting. The other thing about this is one of the key elements that I loved was this tongue, but I didn't even notice it when I looked at it at first. So I would try to think about any way that I could highlight or add something to get my eye over here. So in Photoshop, Daniel, I just took a couple liberties here. I dropped this. It's just a dodge layer, and I brought the light. So instead of looking like a spotlight, so without that, it kind of looked like you were shining a flashlight or some kind of light source on it in a round circle. And when you dodge it, it kind of makes it look like the light's coming from the front. That also brightened the eye, and it showed this forked tongue up here a little bit better. Did a quick burn on it, and then I added some saturation to the eyeball just itself. So this is what Daniel brought in, pretty close to what he brought in, and a couple little tweaks. That's what I ended up with. Overall, I love this image, and just a few little nitpicks. And I don't know, Frey, if you had anything else.
No, I think you nailed all the points on that. I agree. The lighting is really good, composition is spot on there, and definitely that blade of grass. And I would even say during shooting, if that's something you notice, it's probably kind of hard to notice because you're shooting in the dark. But with the light, you might have been able to see it. But if you could have noticed that and just kind of, the littlest move to the right may have corrected that and gotten either the blade of grass at least off the tail, if not off the entire upper portion of the snake's body. But nice edits on those as well, Scott. I think those were definitely small, minor improvements, but it was already a really good photo to start with.
Yep.
All right, cool. So I'm going to jump over to me now. I have a photo here from Abhishek Ravindra. Hopefully I didn't butcher your name too badly there. Not really sure what the species is here. It looks like some sort of plover to me, but first thing I notice is great eye level perspective. Nice composition, and I love the wing stretch there. It looks like the other foot's probably stretched either tucked in or stretched back. But I really like the different pose there. Countless photos of shorebirds standing in water from an eye level perspective can be found everywhere, but to find something a little bit different and unique is definitely a great move there. A couple of nitpicks I would have is I would say the eye seems just a touch dark. So maybe lightening that. And then I'm not really sure because I'm not familiar with this species, but there's a little bit of, I'm not sure if you guys can see it. I guess I'm zoomed in already. Uh, there's like some magenta tones, kind of pinkish purpley tones showing in the wing there. They kind of don't look like they should belong to me, and I'm also seeing that in a little bit down here in the water. But if that is actual natural color on the wing, then so be it. Then it should be there. But if not, definitely keep an eye on that kind of thing and maybe try to clean it up. And then I think the last nitpick I would have is compositionally. Maybe I would leave a little bit more space on the left, but that's just kind of my taste. I tend to go a little bit overboard with offsetting. And then the last thing I noticed is I would say this ISO probably could have come down. The image doesn't look too noisy as it is. It has a little bit of noise there, but it doesn't look too bad. But I would say at 4,000th of a second, you probably could have easily halved, if not more, that shutter speed, and then dropped your ISO down to at least 400, if not maybe 200, with these settings, and kept a nice sharp photo. So, any thoughts from you on that one, Scott?
No, I think I have. Is this Dennis's picture?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay. Yeah, I had a comment because I have one similar later, just about the background. This one isn't quite as obvious, so I don't mind the background on this one, but I'll kind of loop back to that concept. I had two other pictures where water reflections in the background could have been edited a little bit differently.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, no problems.
Okay, cool. All right, back to you.
All right, so this next one I have is from Dante. I'm going to go with Frado for the last name. So this looks like, obviously it's a shorebird. It's one of those shorebirds. It's kind of in a resting position. So a couple things about this that I like. First of all, there's eye contact, even though it's a little tough to see. Normally, we wouldn't recommend photographing birds going the opposite direction, but anytime they're looking back, you can get some interesting perspective. So you can see parts of the feather detail, the wing detail, and the tail that you don't normally see. So I like the pose. The eyes are open, which is nice. A little tough to see around the eye. The biggest call out I had of this, it looks like Dante did get low. So I like the perspective. He's pretty much eye level. Maybe an opportunity to get a little bit lower, but I would say he looks like he's within a foot off the ground. When I looked at the shutter speed, I was a little surprised. It was 1/2500th of a second at f6.3. So I'm not sure what lens. He's at 600 millimeters, so I'm guessing it's probably like a Sigma or a Tamron telezoom that was the smallest aperture. But it looked a little noisy. I don't know if that comes through. So my recommendation would have just been on this one is to cut the shutter speed the same way Ray just said on the previous picture, and try to reduce some of the noise. And I think with a bird that's this stationary, easily you could shoot that at 1/1000th or 1/500th. If you were worried about movement, I can understand going up, but a bird like this probably isn't going to move unless you make it. And in that case, he's going to fly away from you and you're not going to get a picture anyway. So nice image, nice perspective. Composition is right on. Like he's got this sand occupies the bottom third and this water looks like it's occupying the top 2/3. And he's kind of looking back into frame. So compositionally really good. Perspective's good. I'd like to see the eye highlighted a little bit and maybe just cut the shutter speed down and get some better, a cleaner image. That's it.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And I want to mention exactly what Scott just said. I want to not mention, but reiterate. With stationary birds like this, a lot of the times wildlife photographers kind of hammer in higher shutter speed, higher shutter speed, higher shutter speed. I personally, and I think Scott is kind of the same mindset, I kind of think that with a stationary bird like this, you can drop that shutter speed way down, man. I think you could safely have shot this probably at 250th of a second if you needed to. I don't think the lighting conditions in this case required that, but I think you can really get that ISO down. Now, if you were listening to the last talk that I had with Josh Galicki, he had mentioned how a lot of the times he likes to keep his shutter speed up a little higher with the anticipation of potential action, and that's certainly something to keep in mind. So maybe with a bird tucked in like this, it's not just going to fly when its beak is tucked in. It's obviously comfortable and resting. You maybe drop down, get those lower ISO, lower shutter speed images, and then pop back up with the anticipation of action. So I did just want to
I would
mention
agree.
that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So if there was a bird like this, almost, or a portrait of a songbird, a lot of times I'll start down at like 250th of a second, take a few pictures, try to get like a nice quality image. And then once I feel like I've gotten the portrait part of it, I'll start cranking the shutter up and then anticipate like movement or if he's going to fly or eat or feed or do whatever.
Exactly. And then I'm just going to hop back here to my screen now. Josh in the comments did mention it looked like this image was a little bit off level, and I would totally agree with that. So if I look at the sharp water line here, it actually is more like that, and just that little correction will kind of put you back in level there. So that's something I missed, and thanks for pointing that out in the comments. And let's see, let's move on to the next image here. From the same photographer, we have another image here. Again, I'm not sure what species this is. Definitely some kind of swallow, I would say. And a great portrait here. Again, it suffers from, I think, the same things again. Pretty high shutter speed, ISO 800. I'm not sure what camera body this is. Let me see if I can find out. Canon 700D. So I'm not real familiar with that, but it looks like at ISO 800, it's not handling the noise that well. So I would say definitely watch your ISO on that. And again, maybe you could have dropped the shutter speed. So light looks really nice here. You have nice direction to the light. It's soft. It's a great portrait. Again, you found something unique. So the beak is open. It's not just sitting there staring at you, which is great. And compositionally, it's great with these long wingtips. You've actually included them nicely. Some space in the direction it's looking. Nice clean perch. Nice clean background. I just noticed there's one little twig right up here that, let's see if we hop into the develop mode in Lightroom here. We can just use the spot removal tool and just get rid of that real quick, or you could have just cropped it out in the original, and it looks like you tried to remove something there and it maybe had left just a little bit of an artifact left. So make sure you clean that up, or just go ahead and crop that out after the fact. Other than that, it looks really good, and I really love the light in the eye there. That really kind of pops. Any points on this one, Scott?
No, there's nothing. I love it.
Yeah, perfect. All right, back to you, Scott.
Okay, so this next one is from Dennis. I'm just going to go with Dennis D. A couple things about this. First of all, it's shot with a Canon PowerShot, so it's not a DSLR. I think that's one of those ultra zoom.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Yep. And but a really nice photo. So if I'm not mistaken, I think I talked to Dennis earlier. I think he's really young too. So this kid might be like 14 or 15, and if he's 45, I really apologize. So a couple things about this. 1/400th f5.6. So I think the settings are pretty good for a shorebird. You could go a little bit higher, but with these smaller sensors, very sensitive to ISO.
Yeah.
So probably a smart choice by keeping the shutter down. Got great light in the eye, so you can see it looks like the rising sun on the horizon.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Front lit, yeah, love it. Great pose, almost a perfect profile. There were a couple little things in the I don't know if I can show you in the edit. The lower part of this bill looks odd to me. I don't know if this is an edit, and if Dennis is on, I'm hoping he will comment on that. But there looks like there's these sharp angled lines. I noticed that when I zoomed in. I didn't notice it as much when I was pulled out. The biggest thing, and by far the biggest thing with this, is there's an artificial background back here. Correct. Somewhere. This isn't a natural look. So it's probably a red building. And to me, if I knew I was shooting shorebirds, I would look for the location first and the background first, where you could see these really nice green and blue tones in the water, and you kind of lose that. And if this was a tree or a rock formation or had some kind of color that looked natural in the background, I would say totally fine. But because it's so angular and squared, you can kind of tell it's a building.
Those vertical lines,
and that's really, that's really the only nitpick. I think it's a great, I think it's a great shot, and it shows what you can do. You don't have to have $20,000. I've seen people with $20,000 take a lot worse picture than this, and here's somebody that's doing it with a pretty budget setup. So really great job.
Yeah, I would say the exact same thing. The first thing I noticed kind of after seeing the bird was that background. So I'm not sure if you either had no option, but it looks like to your left and right there was some cleaner space there, and most likely this bird wasn't just standing stationary. I assume it's kind of walking around, so if you have some shots where it kind of walked into a more natural background, maybe kind of go with them. But yeah, great shot. All right, let's see. Back to me here. We have Angie Birmingham submitted this photo of a giraffe. So first things first, vertical composition works well with an animal so tall, obviously. But I would say chopping this guy at the knees isn't ideal for me. I would want to see if you're not going to include the entire length of the legs, which this animal is all about being kind of tall like that. I would almost want to see more of a crop, kind of somewhere in here, so just to include the belly like that, so it's more of a deliberate leg clip, or maybe even more, so we're kind of losing the indication. So now it's just kind of body neck. Maybe something like that might be a little bit more pleasing. But in any case, back to the original there. Um, Lighting looks like, it's not the most flattering lighting. It's kind of, bright, strong sun, but I'd say you kind of handled it nicely there. Nothing's overexposed. The contrast looks good. The color looks good. So, and the one heavy shadow there isn't really, it's not killing the image by any means there. So, I would say, you know, shooting at a better time of day would definitely be an improvement. Early morning, later evening, that could definitely help. And then again, I'm sure this was taken in kind of a safari situation, maybe from a vehicle. I'm assuming from a vehicle for safety reasons, and you don't have as much room to move around. But the other thing I notice is the neck kind of intersects this tree back here, and you have this nice open space here, whereas movement maybe 3 to 5 feet to the left would have placed the giraffe in this open space with a nice offset tree to kind of fill up the open space there. So thinking compositionally like that, if it's something you can do, then moving might help that. But if you had no option to move, then I can see that being a limitation there. Any points you have on that one, Scott?
No, I think you got it.
All right, cool. Back to you.
Okay, so this one is an image. It's Edwin Wilkie, I would imagine the last name. And this is shot with a Canon Rebel T3, 300 millimeters, 1/500 f8. It's kind of it's not really a macro. I mean, it's a macro, but it's not with a macro lens, it doesn't look like. But so a couple things. I really, really liked this when I looked at it. I love the composition. I love this little perch and the details you can see in it. The colors, so we have these really nice flattering colors. So you got a green background with a lot of orange, maroon tones. Those are really nice complementary colors. So I really, really love this. However, there's two little things. One is it feels a little oversaturated to me.
That was what I was going to say.
And it could be me, but I think it feels a little oversaturated, especially in the oranges. So the greens back here look good. And so in Lightroom or Photoshop, you have the ability to selectively pick a color and desaturate it. I would have just pulled down the reds or oranges until I found a good balance. The second thing is it really looks like the focus grabbed over here on the wing. So you get this beautiful wing detail, which is great. But to me, we should have some detail in these eyes. So when you're ever shooting dragonflies or damselflies, you're going to be able to actually see these patterns, these really detailed patterns in their eyes if you nail the focus. So knowing that those patterns aren't there, I kind of know that the focus is a little bit further back and it hit this wing. So two options. One is to increase the aperture or shoot maybe at like f12 or f16 maybe, I would say, but that's going to cut your shutter down. Or you use a flash and you try to do it that way. And I don't know if it's flashed. I imagine it's not. That was all I had on it. I really do like the composition. I think it's a great, clean image.
I agree with everything on that. Just the first thing I noticed, first impact, was just the red seemed a bit much. So yeah, I agree with that. All right, cool. Hopping back to my screen here, we got Bob Ackerman submitted this red fox. First things first, great light. I love the look back in the pose. Beautiful field, nice green grass, popping yellow flowers back there. Great light in the eyes. So nice eye contact. And nice low perspective. So we have some shallow depth of field here, some out of focus foreground, nice soft background. So overall, very pleasing image. But then upon further inspection, it just, especially when I zoom in, it's looking a little bit soft there, and it almost has a look of, and I know this wasn't the case because it was shot at ISO 200, but it almost has a look of being like heavy noise reduction. So what I'm guessing that maybe came from was maybe some heavy sharpening to compensate for the little bit of softness that may have been there. And at 1/60th of a second at 600 millimeter, I could definitely see that being the case, not getting a tack sharp photo there. So again, I'm not sure what camera we're looking at here. Let's see if I can find that out. A Nikon D3300. I would say you could at least probably safely double your ISO, which would bring us up to ISO 400, and then it would double our shutter speed, so we'd be up in the 250 range at that point, and you definitely have a little bit of better odds of getting a nice sharp photo at that point and not compromising too much noise there. I don't really know how much this fox was moving. It kind of, and I like this about the photo, it gives the appearance of the fox was just kind of cruising through this field, caught your attention, or I should say you caught its attention. It looked back for a quick moment, you got the shot, and then off it went. That's kind of the story I get from this photo, which is great. I think, it's nice when a photo has a story like that. I think just kind of keep an eye on those settings and maybe trying to keep that shutter speed up a little bit higher could have helped you get that tack sharpness that really would have made this photo go from a really nice photo to an amazing shot. Any points from you, Scott?
No, I really liked it. I didn't kind of zoom in on this one, but just when I looked at it from the thumbnails and stuff, I really liked it. There's some really nice rim lighting on the underside of the head on that fur there.
Yeah.
I think that's really nice. And then a little bit of light caught the eye. So I might have pulled up the shadows a little bit on the opposite side.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
You got to be careful when you do that.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to be careful you don't go too far and it looks hokey, because it's in shadow. But yeah, really nice picture.
And then Karam in the comments also gave a suggestion for maybe just a little bit looser composition. I think that could have certainly worked well. It looks like you had pleasing everything in here, so maybe just a little bit more space around it would have worked. But I don't think you went too tight. Sometimes you see photos like this and they're kind of cropped. Let's see if I can kind of show you guys here. Sometimes people will crop kind of just like, right to the edges there to kind of just really fill the frame, and it leaves nothing else in the image to kind of show context and that sort of thing. So I think at least you gave some space there, which was good, but you could always entertain the idea of a looser composition. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so back to Scott.
All right, so I love me some raptors. So this is I got Haley Cruz. I would guess this is a Harlan's red tail, but I am not 100% expert on my Western hawks. So this was shot at 1/2000th, which is a really good setting for any kind of bird in flight. F8, Nikon D500. Noise looks very manageable. I think all the settings were dead on this. So I love the composition. So she fills up this whole kind of top corner with the bird. There's not a lot of empty space. And then she occupies the bottom third with this beautiful mountain in the background, which is why I love seeing hawks out west. We just don't get these kind of views.
Helly just said it was a juvenile red-tailed hawk.
All right. We don't have them. They don't look like this.
No, they do not. They really do not.
Yeah. So a couple of things. If this was a competition photo, I wouldn't change anything about it. If it wasn't, I might get rid of this little bit of tree over here in the corner. I like that it's included for the reason you kind of get a sense of where it came from. So I definitely wouldn't edit this group of trees out. I might play with that, but I don't think that's a big deal. Actually, the only thing I did with this, there's two things. One, it's looking back and it's pretty much a dead profile, so that's fine. I would love it if it was looking back even more, especially because it's going the opposite
bit more.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of going away from you, so you almost want the head to kind of turn back and engage a little bit more. So there's nothing you can do about that.
No.
As far as taking the photo. You're going to do what you got. I took it into Photoshop and just did a couple things with this one. Oops, sorry, wrong Haley Cruz. All right, here we go. So when I looked at this, I thought this background could be a little bit more contrasty. So I just kind of burned down this background a little bit, and then I took and I dodged that area up there. That's all something you can do and still submit a photo to a contest. So just before and after, that's Haley's before. That is a couple little edits that just make it pop a little bit. You might like it, you might not, but it's just something I thought might add a little touch to it. But really great photo.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said on that. I don't have any other changes. Yeah, really cool shot. All right, hopping back to my screen. We have a photo here. Looks like a killdeer from Chuck Swindle. And first thing I notice, killer reflection. Definitely good job on that. Nice pose. Normally I would say my first correction would be to suggest a lower angle, because you are kind of shooting down on it a little bit here, except for the fact that the lower angle would have completely removed the reflection. I can see there's a foreground element, probably another one of these kind of little spits of sand or rock there, sticking out, and a lower perspective, the reflection would have went right into that and kind of killed that. So great move with where you're at, whether it was on purpose or just by luck. That was definitely a nice thing. So you have a nice interesting pose here. I'm not really sure for me about the almost vertical kind of squarish crop. I don't mind this down here, but I'd say you could lose some of that, and then the brighter area up top here isn't adding much. So I would almost suggest kind of a more horizontal, or at least chopping or losing some of the top and bottom. If you're set on the composition that you like, which is very subjective, so that certainly may be the case, I would definitely suggest burning this top edge and making that a little bit darker, actually lightening the bird slightly. I think the bird could come up a little bit lighter. The greens look a little bit oversaturated to me, and then maybe just a little bit of lightening, just a little pop in the eye, especially the orange kind of ring around there, just to kind of make that stand out. But other than that, it looks sharp and clear. You shot a nice low f-stop there, which gives you some shallow depth of field, so the bird's really standing out. And again, with the ISO being this high, it looks like the camera handled this no problem. It doesn't look overly noisy, but I don't necessarily see a reason for 2,000th of a second and ISO 900 on this, unless you were, as some people do, anticipating action. In that case, if that was your goal, then those settings would be fine. But always maybe play around and just try a lower one, and then get right back to where your setting should be for the flying shot. Any thoughts, Scott?
No, 100% agree.
Cool. All right, back to you.
All right, so the next one is a pair of black skimmers. Interesting, because when I looked at this, I saw that it was shot at 70 millimeters, so really right on top of the birds, which is really cool. So nice, intimate kind of feel to this. Couple things about it. A vertical composition, and then we got these trailing lines. So the birds are pushed to the front of the frame, which I see a lot of people do with skimmers, and I don't have a problem with that if you want to show these trails. But if you're going to show the trails, why not go the other direction? And I think the reason is because you want to get all this reflection in. So I think it's just tough composition. You're kind of dealing with a couple of different elements, but by going vertical and including the reflection, you kind of push these birds way in the front, and you lose a sense of where they came from. So that might just be my personal preference. And then it looks like the light is really, really, really nice, and it's probably very low because there's a shadow below it.
Yeah.
So I would love to see the same pass maybe 20 minutes later. The light might be a little bit stronger, but you would get light out of this shadowed area. If I was shooting this area and had the ability to change, because obviously you're real close, if there was an area I could have found that didn't have as much shade, maybe these birds are both getting that golden hour light all the way through, and you can't even see the eyes, which is the kind of the tough part on this. When you don't get that light coming down, you lose the eye. So the composition probably just isn't my preference. I don't think it's awful, because I understand the reason to go with the reflection. The big thing for me was just getting that golden hour light, which you were there at the right time of day. We just didn't get it on the entire bird.
Yeah, I completely agree, Scott. I think the composition isn't, I'm not in love with it up front, but I do see it as being purposeful to include, like you said, the trails, include the motion, like the birds almost kind of flying out of the frame, and then obviously the bottom, all that space at the bottom, to include the reflection. So I think it's great that some thought went into that. And yeah, I completely agree. When you first see that amazing light on the top wingtips there, all it makes you want to do is just see that on the rest of the bird. So if that could have been solved, that would have been nice. All right. Hopping back over here, we got a photo from Colin. I'm not even going to try your last name. That looks a little tough. Thanks so much for submitting. We got a pair of great blue herons doing some courting behavior here. So, great interaction. The light is actually, it looks pretty decent there. They're up on a tree, so we have a solid blue background, which I'm normally not a huge fan of, just a blue sky background, but you have two birds, they have great interaction, so who cares, that background just kind of disappears when you have something more than just a portrait happening there. If it was just a single bird standing there against the blue sky, it would be a lot more boring to me, but because you have this interaction, it's actually kind of nice that there's nothing back there to distract you from the interaction. A great shape on both birds, like almost the same curve on both sides. You have the long neck feathers kind of splayed out here, beaks touching. Nice light in this bird's eye. Of course, it would have been great if we could have seen this bird's eye just a little bit more, but that's being like super nitpicky and not something you can control. The light direction is coming from off camera right here just a little bit, as you can see from the shadows there. So this bird just kind of, the eye socket just went in the shade a little bit there. Not much to change on this. I don't see, everything looks pretty good there. I kind of maybe a little bit slightly warmer white balance. I think your colors are right on there, but they look really clean. But maybe just sometimes a slighter. And let me actually try this and see how it looks, because sometimes I think it would look good and other times it won't. So yeah, just a little bit warmer white balance and maybe just a touch darker kind of gives you the indication of more morning sun. You would have to kind of dial that blue sky back in, so you'd want to do it a little bit more selectively than I just did, but something to play with. But where your color was is certainly not bad, and I think you have a great shot here. Anything from you, Scott?
No, this one's all about the pose, and I think that's what's featured and that's what works. So yeah, nice
Awesome.
job.
Cool. All right, right back to you.
All right, I got one from Phil S. Stolsteimer. I'm going to go with Stolsteimer. So this is in my wheelhouse because this is a warbler, a nice tight portrait. I don't have the camera settings on this one, but everything looks like it should. I like the composition. He's kind of looking back into frame. Good detail. Everything looks good about this. I did pull this one into Photoshop, so I just wanted to show you a couple little things with this.
I'm guessing we're going to see a burn.
You're going to see a burn and you're going to see a crop. So the first thing I wanted to look at, like you can kind of see there's a lot of space up top. So if this was me, I'm bringing this in a little bit. I know it's already tight, but just to take away some room from the top, I'm probably going to bring that in there. Yeah, I think I'll.
And you're not losing anything with that. So there was nothing special out there that you're really kind of removing at this point. So I think that's fine.
Yep. And then, as Ray said, I'm going to burn this. It's a little bright down here. So anytime I do songbirds, I like the lighter area to come from the direction of the light and darken everything else. So I darken the rest. And then I add some light back on the face. So this is just my personal preference. This is absolutely, if you don't like it, that's fine. But that's the beginning. You can see your eyes drawn to the left in the lower part. And now here, your eyes drawn up toward the eye. So really nice shot, though. I love my songbirds.
Yeah, and I suggested the burn just because that's the exact same thing I would have done. So yeah, I figured that was coming, and I think that edit is nice. So yeah, nice shot though, definitely.
Yeah,
all
yeah,
right.
Like it.
Cool. All right, Daniel Wakefield here with another reptile. I don't know what this is. I'm not really good with reptiles, but what a cool looking, I'm gonna say lizard. It's a great shot. So first thing I noticed, the lizard really stands out. You actually, surprisingly, you must have been really on top of this thing, because even at F10 with your settings, you still have some shallow depth there. The background kind of starts to fall off pretty quickly. Even the back of the rock that is perched on here is already starting to get soft. So that's really neat. I love these little green accents in here. The lighting is really nice. But then the first thing I notice after I see all those things is it feels like the entire photo is tipping over to the left. It looks like a mountainous area based on the hills in the background there, so this could be completely level for all I know, but regardless of whether it's legitimately level or not, the photo just kind of gives the appearance of toppling over to the left. So for me, the first edit would be to actually kind of try to get almost this the mountaintops in the background at least straight or much closer to straight. So maybe something like that, and I understand in this circumstance I don't have any more original to play with, but that to me already feels a lot better, and like it's not kind of falling over to the left quite as much. As far as adjustments, I would say I would maybe just kind of lighten and add a little contrast, because we definitely have, you can see it was cloudy at this moment, so there's not a strong light going here, so maybe just to kind of pop that a little bit, maybe darken some of these lighter spots in the rock again to kind of draw our eye into the lizard here. And then this is a weird thing, this is kind of stuff that only just bothers me. I don't think it bothers many people, but this one blade of grass that had fallen down there is just catching the sun, or like the sky light, it's reflecting it kind of weird. So it's kind of like the brightest thing other than the sky in this photo, and my eye just keeps getting drawn to this curve over there just because it's kind of a big bright spot there. So maybe just cloning that out or just kind of burning it and darkening it down would be the only other thing. But other than that, it's a really nice photo. Great job including some environment. Love the texture, and I love this critter, whatever it is. Any thoughts, Scott?
It's 100% everything I would have said. I would have cloned out the stick. Now I can tell you, if I'm not mistaken, Daniel is a purist, so he's not going to clone anything out.
Which is fine.
Um, yeah, but adding the contrast, I agree with that sky. I think you could make that even a little bit more dramatic with more contrast.
Yeah, good point.
In the rocks. Yep. You could get more texture. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So I would just add contrast, and I personally would clone that stick out, but I don't think Daniel will.
All right, cool. Back to you, Scott.
All right, so this one is, I think it's Corey Nimmer. And let me pull it up. Here we go. Settings 3000, 3200th, I guess, f8. So I liked this at first. I didn't get it instantly, and I thought it was a cool pose. And then I'm like, oh, wait a second, there's a dragonfly up top too. Now it's really cool. So I really liked it once I figured out that the dragonfly was up there. And maybe I'm just a little slower than most people. So I just think that you could take this really interesting pose in this moment where he's just like, I gotta get that, and he's trying to figure out how. I brought this one into Photoshop, and again, I do a lot of dodge and burn. Sometimes that's the only thing I'll do to edit. I just dialed it down and up a little bit in a couple areas. It might be too much for some people, but I was trying to show this guy up there a little bit better. I don't know if it does or not. I might be missing a layer here. I actually think I'm missing a curve adjust layer that I put in later. So I'm just going to do something real quick. I'll do this live. It's not a big deal. I'm just going to paint in some light up in this area. And I'm just going to do it as quickly as I can for time. But this was the original. It looked a little bit bright. The light's a little stronger. It's not awful, but it's just a little stronger. The bottom adds absolutely nothing to this photo because it's just a lot of mucky stuff. So I have no problem just burning that stuff down and trying to feature that dragonfly. So that's the before. That's what I would have done, or something similar to that.
I'm with you on that.
And that's really it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Chuck Swindle asks if that was a least bittern, and I would say no, that's definitely a green heron. And
yeah, I think a green.
Yeah, we're just getting some feedback. And then for anybody that's going to be watching this later, Daniel said that was a greater short-horned lizard from Arizona on that last photo that I was editing. So thanks for letting us know what that was, and really cool critter. All right, cool.
And Daniel, let us know let me know if I'm right about the fact that you do not like to clone stuff out of your pictures, because I'm curious about that.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Yeah, and that's a great point that you mentioned, Scott. It's definitely not for everybody to do that sort of thing. It kind of depends on what your goals are with a photo, and what sort of rules you've set for yourself in with wildlife photography. I think for me and myself and Scott, we can both say that our goal is kind of to just show a really nice, pleasing to look at photo, and we don't have a problem with some, minor to decently significant manipulation that hopefully doesn't make the image, too far from reality. So we still have a good base in reality, but we have no problem with pushing that photo around a little bit to make it kind of shine.
Yeah, to me, you have to capture the integrity of what happened that day. It doesn't have to be, we're not photojournalists, so cloning a little bit here and there, dodge and burn is perfectly acceptable. Even for competition photos, you can dodge and burn and adjust contrast and color. But we both clone and remove branches and stuff like that all the time.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so got another photo from Dennis here. Looks like I'm going to guess the same exact location that previous plover was photographed at. We have a yellowlegs this time. And I'm guessing the same location because we have, again, that kind of red-white vertical man-made object in the background there. So outside of that, anyway, first impressions on the photo, nice light, nice low angle. You have something interesting happening with the bird there as far as that beak being open, which is great. Compositionally, I would say we could maybe lose a little bit off the top, maybe a little bit more space in front of it, and then watch your dust spots. So it looks like you have kind of a dark spot right there that looks kind of like a dust spot on the camera, or even if it's not, just something in the background, you can kind of just pop that out real quick. And then, also looking in the below here, with just these bright white spots there, can maybe just clean them up because they kind of just draw your eye. But yeah, again, this man-made object is kind of the the one sore spot in this photo for me. Whether you could have, you could probably even have just slid yourself to the right, maybe a foot, if that, and easily remove that out of the background. So the point I want to make here is watch your background, watch your background, watch your background, and then after that, watch your foreground. There's a lot of things to think about with wildlife photography. Is the bird's position right? Do you have it in focus? Are your settings right? Is the exposure good? All these different things. The lighting good. But, all that being said, the background and foreground are very important as well. So as much as it may suck sometimes to have to keep, just add one more thing to the list, they're definitely things you kind of have to keep in mind and look out for. So, another great shot, especially with the gear you're using, and just keep an eye on those things in the future, and I think you'll just see a nice, steady improvement with your photography. Any points on this one, Scott?
No, that was 100%. I think it would have been a really nice photo if the background was just clean.
Yep. Cool. All right, and back on your screen. Ooh, nice shot. I like that
Yep.
one.
Yeah, so this is Tracy Sepkovich. She's got what I would guess is a short-billed dowitcher. Kind of hard to tell. There's a long build and a short build, but I'm guessing this short build on the East Coast. So a couple things. So normally I don't love like grasses coming in front of the bird. On this picture, I love it. And the reason I love it is because you've got background grass out of focus. You've got foreground grass up here. It gives you the sense that this is where this bird is. It's buried in the marsh, which is probably where she was. I'm guessing by the amount of mud on this bill that when Tracy got this eye level shot, she was probably good and muddy when she got there. But great job on perspective. So you got right at the eye level. So I really, really love that. Everything is clean. So there's good detail. There's highlights in the eye. I love that you get a sense of where this bird was. So all that mud on the bill gives you a sense of this is what this bird does. And you could see it real clearly there. And I like these out of focus grasses. There's only two really minor things I don't like. So there's a lot of white in the background, which generally isn't pleasing. It's just not a great background for most pictures. There's not really much you can do. If there was more grass back here, it probably actually would have helped the picture, but you can't change that. And there's not really much you can do editing wise unless you almost insert a new background or change the color dramatically.
Which would look odd.
That's a small, yeah, I don't think it would look right. There's a little bit of something over here. You can't really tell. I don't think it's too distracting. The other thing is if this was, again, a competition photo, you leave it as is because I think it holds up. If it was a print or you're trying to sell something, this one blade of grass is all by itself and it intersects this bill. So it kind of makes this weird T. So if you were able to edit it and you could Photoshop that out, it's probably something I would do. There's nothing you can do in the field with moving grass. You're not going to be able to change position. As soon as you move, this bird's going to move and walk the other way. So she found, the thing I like is she probably, I'm guessing, either saw the bird or found a spot that she liked and waited for the bird to come to her. There's no way to get this close unless you're buried in the mud, in a blind, or you're waiting a bird out. You're not going to chase this bird down to get this shot because it's going to go the other way. So great job, Tracy.
Yeah, agree with everything you said. I love that in the marsh feel with it. I definitely like that with my marshy shorebirds. But yeah, that one blade of grass, if that blade of grass had come in this way and angled that way and kind of almost paralleled the beak, it would have been better. But it's such a hard intersection. So the main feature of this bird is this strong pointing long bill here, and it just crosses it right in the middle there. So that strong intersection is what really kind of hurts that blade of grass for me. And yeah, if it was me, I would have definitely removed that. All right, cool. Hopping back to my screen. I just realized I was pointing at your screen, Scott, and nobody could see that. But yeah. In any case, all right, we got another photo from Edwin here. First things first. Wow, colorful, in your face. Fishing action, kind of a little blood and guts gory. So it's definitely got a lot going on here, and I like all that about it. Second thing I noticed, the color is a little bit too much, I think. So it's just a little bit oversaturated for my taste. It's definitely strong sun, I can see that, but you were at the right angle for that strong sun, so it looks like it's coming in from kind of overhead and behind you a little bit, which is the place to be when the sun is high and really strong like that. You don't have any really horrid shadows that are going anywhere. In fact, here, this bill kind of indicates the direction of the sun, so the sun was coming from up this direction, and you can see the shadow getting thrown down here. So, good position in where you were with the sun. in relation to it when it's this bright out, and you have a behavior here that outweighs that harsh light. If this was just a portrait, I probably wouldn't like it that much because of the harsh lighting, but because you have some really great feeding behavior going on here, and it's cropped close and in your face, I would say you can kind of overlook the less than ideal lighting. The next thing I noticed is, pardon me, it actually looks a little bit soft. So again, with it being this bright, maybe f8 wasn't required. The nice thing about f8 is it actually looks like it gave you some depth of field. You have a lot of stuff in focus on the fish here, but it may have also been a focus issue. So it looks like more of the front of this fish is in focus than this area, but in any case, the eye just looks a little bit soft to me, so I would have liked to seen that a little bit sharper. So I don't know if it's simply increased shutter speed or what, but 500th of a second with this Aninga kind of moving through the water with its head like that, and maybe the fish wriggling around is a little bit slow, so I would watch that. And then the last thing I noticed with the heavy saturation is, and it's kind of hard to see, but there's kind of just like some weird magenta and cyan tones kind of just showing up in the bird, and I know they shouldn't be there. This should just be kind of a black to brownish kind of white showing in there. So just watch that saturation, maybe tone that down a little bit, but overall I would say really cool behavior shot, and I kind of like the nice close in your face crop. Scott, any thoughts?
Yeah, I normally don't like shooting down it at the water, but the water here, it doesn't bother me as a background, so I think it kind of works. Yeah. I get 100% agree. This is actually the dragonfly we had earlier was the same photographer.
Gotcha.
And we both thought the saturation on that was a little strong, and I agree that it's a little strong here. So
yeah,
sometimes more isn't more, and sometimes less is more. So I would say just keep an eye on the saturation. It could also be your monitor.
I was just
so
say
you
that.
might want to, yep. If you notice consistently that you're getting feedback on saturation, take a look at it on at how you're viewing it and where you're viewing it, whether it's on a phone or monitor, and that could be the problem as well. So yeah, just a little strong on the saturation.
Cool. Right back to you, Scott.
Yep. So Haley Cruz, I got another one. This was one of the only kind of duck waterfowls. This is a eared grebe, if I'm not mistaken. So really, really great action shot with a lot of water coming off the bird. This was shot at 1/2000th of a second at f8, so pretty good speed. You can go a little bit higher to catch these water droplets, but I would say 1/2000th is definitely within the ballpark. So just what stands out is just great action shot in a great pose. So there's a few little things I would do about this, but it's really a great image. There's not a whole lot. The one thing I didn't like just about the image itself is, again, that we talked about that background earlier. You've got a man-made background, and it's obvious because of these, kind of symmetrical lines on the left. The only thing you could do as a photographer is try to pick your space and see what's going to be in the background before you get there. But again, if the birds aren't cooperating and they're not in the right location, sometimes you're going to end up with backgrounds that might not be ideal. But just be conscious of it. I know Haley's a good photographer, and she probably is looking at stuff like that and maybe just couldn't avoid it. I did bring this one into Photoshop. I just wanted to show you a couple little things with this. I did take and again, I just kind of burned a few areas. The eye here, these grebes have amazing eyes. So the fact that it looks like it's a little bit in shadow isn't ideal. So you could lighten that up a little bit. So I kind of dodged it a little bit in the front and on the eye, and then I burned it. So this was Haley's image, and this is dodge and burn. Just to try to accent the eye, I might have saturated the eye a little bit too. It might not be for everybody, but it kind of brought my attention up where that eye is, because that's the most powerful feature. And then one little tiny thing, when I zoomed in close to do the detail on the eye, I don't know if you guys can see this, but right around the bird, there's noise here and noise here and noise here. But when you go out here, there's almost none. My guess is either the bird was sharpened or that the background did a noise reduction. And when it was masked in or painted in, or however Haley did the application, it left just a little aura. Now, that's probably not something you're going to see if this is a smaller print. You might catch it on a bigger print. And if you were submitting it in for like a contest or a photo, and depending if this made it to the fact where the judges are really looking at detail, they may kind of see that thing depending on how picky they are. And we call it pixel peeping. So if they're pixel peeping, they might notice it. I didn't notice it at first. I just noticed it when I went in to kind of dodge the eye a little bit. But great picture, love the pose, and I think it's definitely a great shot.
Yeah, Haley just commented it was a rough situation. The black background is a boat and dock, and the yellow is the paint on that boat. So that's what we're seeing back there. And yeah, I would agree with you, Scott. The definitely watch the noise. I'm gonna guess it was a noise reduction layer on the outside, and just not masked in perfectly. And then the only other thing I noticed is that strong bit of cyan that's kind of right where the bird touches the water. I'm not sure if that's
Yeah.
just the
Oh,
watercolor
yep.
or if it's just the shade right there. I mean, it kind of looks like the watercolor, but I'm not seeing that color of the water anywhere else, so I'm not really sure where that's coming
Yeah.
from.
Yeah, I think when I edited it, I can't tell. I did. I know when I played around with that, I don't think I removed it. I did it once and I removed that.
Yeah,
So again, you can selectively pick the color cyan and just desaturate it. But I 100% agree. There's like this weird kind of cyan cast in there.
yeah. And then Josh, or actually Nick, just commented on the comments that you can maybe just lower the saturation on the yellow in that color since the watercolor back there is sort of grayish neutral toned. Maybe just desaturating that yellow can definitely help remove that distracting element out of the background, which is a good suggestion.
Yep.
All right, cool. Hopping back over to me real quick. I'm going to try and speed things up a little bit because I know we're starting to get a little long here. We have a photo from Henry Bossett. I love the concept here. The heavy offset, just kind of featuring the bill of this American oystercatcher. I think it's an American, definitely an oystercatcher of some sort. And I'm not a big fan of the framing. That's just a personal preference, though. I know a lot of people that love that, so nothing wrong there. Clean background. The lighting looks okay, but I would say the first thing I notice after, my first impression is, wow, this is cool, this is different. I like the attempt at an interesting composition here. And then my second, like, immediate notice after that is the quality is really, really tough on this. It kind of looks to me like it was just a heavy, heavy crop to get it up to that size. And if I zoom in here, you kind of notice that it's just really grainy and noisy, and almost has kind of a just oversampled kind of digital artifact effect to it. So, unless you shot this bird really close, it's kind of tough to get a quality crop out of it this tight. So I would say just keep an eye on that if you want to try something like this. Definitely try and get yourself closer just to maintain the quality. But I like the intent here. I like the concept. I think it's just not quite perfectly executed at this point. Any thoughts other than that, Scott?
No, I this was the same photographer that had an interesting composition on the other one. So it is neat to try different things and experiment and play around. So I don't hate that. It's not how I personally would have done it, but not everybody's going to compose things the same way. Not everybody's eye sees it the same way. So it's definitely different and a little interesting. Yeah.
All right, cool. Back to you, Scott.
Yeah, I have one more, but before I do, it was actually Nick that suggested removing the yellow. So look what this
Yes,
did. I just
yeah.
it took me 3 seconds. I just
Nice.
deselected the yellows.
Yeah.
Yeah, good call, Nick. And it really did make a difference. And again, with that kind of thing, normally, even if this is a contest entry, you'd probably be able to get away with that and not have it be eliminated as altered. You didn't clone over it, so you just adjusted color, which most contests will allow you to do. So, yeah, pretty cool.
Hey Scott, real
Good
quick,
call,
just
Nick.
going to put a
Yeah.
pause on you. We had a comment. Josh actually asked, "What's the consensus on oystercatcher eye bleed?" So I'm just going to hop back to my screen here real quick. So oystercatchers, if you're not familiar, they have an interesting sort of pupil iris situation here in that this little bit of black that kind of bleeds out. It actually makes their, I guess it's the pupil part, actually look misshapen, and everyone is kind of different and a little bit unique. So Josh was asking what's the thought about removing that. He likes to remove it, and then one or two other commenters agreed with that. But I don't know. My thing, I actually kind of like it. I like the unique nature of it on each different bird, and I've always left it. But I would say personal preference on that one. What's your thought on that, Scott?
Yeah, I go personal preference too. I tend to leave it in, but
Yeah,
it does sometimes I've looked at it and it does bother me. It's kind of weird,
it is a
especially
weird
if you're
thing.
close
Yeah,
up on it. Yeah.
yeah, cool. All right,
Yeah.
back to you, Scott.
I thought it was your turn. Is it my turn again?
Yeah, I
This is
just
my
did the
last
oyster
one
catcher
here.
thing. Yeah,
Okay,
and then you
are
were
we good
fixing the
then?
Haley thing. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so last one for me. This is Tracy Sepkovich, and we've got a snowy owl. So yeah, so this here's what I love. So I actually posted a thing about snowy owls on Instagram and just how tired I was of seeing them because it was the same shot. And these locations, whether it's like Long Island or on the Jersey Shore, you've got 10, 20 photographers all days of the week up there, and they're all getting the exact same shot: blue sky, front lit. So what I loved about this, yes, it's a snowy owl on the dune, but no, it doesn't look anything like the other pictures, and that's because.
Just a
Go
real
ahead,
quick
yes.
interruption for anybody watching not in the Northeast U.S. So that's what we're talking about. Snowy owls have kind of had an eruption this year. They're hanging out. There's really good numbers down in the northeastern area of the country, the United States, and there's just an influx of them and a ton of photographers shooting them. They're hanging out a lot in beachy areas like this, and that's kind of what Scott was referencing.
When I listened to Josh last week, he made a couple comments about photographers packing up their gear and going home. So this is a photo that was shot at 1/10 of a second. I really love people that take chances to try to do things that are tough. And shooting at 1/10 of a second, it's a tough photo. So she really nailed this. This is what she brought in. I didn't make any changes to this. Composition is perfect. She went with a really wide, kind of almost a pano,
Yeah, I like that.
and yeah, the blades of grass add to this. They occupy good space. There's one, I didn't remove this in an edit, but there's one tiny blade of grass here and
Yeah, it's
here.
got to go.
Yeah, I'd probably get rid of that. It's not a big deal, but I'd
No,
probably
it's
get rid
not.
of
I'm
it.
just kidding.
I did want to show what you could do. Personally, this is how I would have done it. I like gradients in the sky. If you take top to bottom and you cool the top of the sky, you'll get a kind of the pinks turn purple. It will not be for everybody, and not everybody's going to love that sky, but that's something that I like to do. The only other edits I had on this was just to lighten a few areas. So I wanted to make some light leading up to the owl. So I kind of dodged a little bit there, and I dodged a little bit there. It ended up kind of brightening the overall feel. So it went from a little bit darker feel to a little bit lighter feel. That's Tracy, what she brought in. It's a little bit warmer. And then you could see mine's a little bit cooler with some dodged areas. But again, the thought is just dodge up, lead up to the subject, which is composed beautifully. So I loved the image the first time. Tracy actually showed this to me a while ago, and I loved it then, and I still love it.
Yeah, so my thoughts on that, same points. I kind of like all the points you made. I like the composition a lot. I love the attempt to try for something after the sun is actually set. And I actually do the same thing you do with the skies there at dawn and dusk, and I actually kind of give them a little bit of a two-tone effect, just because I kind of like that. And it kind of, I think it shows that way more to your eye, but you don't always see that in person or in the photo. But I will say, in this case, on your edit, the dodges are just a little bit too much for me. So that's the fun thing about these kind of edits. It's kind of your personal preference, and everybody kind of has a little bit of a different taste there. So for me, it would have been probably somewhere in between there, because I did think the original was just a touch dark for my taste.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about these dodge layers is you can once you create the layer, you can always dial it down. So if
Yeah.
you just take if I take that layer, and this is something that even in kind of early on in Photoshop, if you're just learning, you can learn how to do these dodge and burn layers. But yeah, you can adjust it wherever you want. So if it's too strong, so if I sent this to Ray, he just dials it down to
Yep.
where he wants it or plays around. It's real easy.
Yeah, perfect. Excellent. All right, hopping back to my screen here. James Hoagland submitted this. Not really sure where this is from. I'm not familiar with this bird, but wow, this is a really cool looking bird. So that's the first thing I noticed, just because it's kind of unfamiliar to me. Looks like some sort of wren. But let's see. After that, after I got over how cool this bird is, I notice, nice, soft, pleasing light. Looks like either overcast or the bird's just in shade. So it's really nice for that portrait. I like how it's low, kind of 1 foot in the water is really neat. So that's kind of a little bit something different and interesting. And you can see the foot either just went in or is just coming out of there from the ripples that we're seeing around it. I like the composition is really cool. And you've definitely included some habitat here to kind of set the location of where this bird hangs out. Overall, color-wise, I would say the whole thing looks a little bit too red to me. So maybe just a little bit of cooling in the white balance, and then just adding a touch of green, maybe. So just like minor white balance corrections. That seems a little bit more neutral to me on my screen. And then I would have probably played a little bit with some burning on the outside, so maybe darkening this area, and then definitely darkening this bright kind of green grass kind of thing back there. And then the only other nitpick I had on this one was in this background, this kind of bright red thing kind of intersecting the bird there. But, I'm guessing with a bird like this, if it's anything like the wrens I'm used to photographing, these things are constantly hopping around. But you got nice light in the eye here and a nice habitat shot. Any thoughts, Scott?
No, and actually, Ray, I lost the feed live, so I'm having trouble seeing it. But
Okay.
I remember looking at it. I do remember seeing the image earlier,
Okay.
and
All
I'm
right, cool.
pretty sure I agreed with all that. Yeah,
Okay. All right. Did you have any more to go over, or that was it for you?
I think that's it.
I have a couple more.
Actually, yeah, I might have one more. Can you pull this one up on the screen? I think I missed this one the first time through.
There you go. Yeah, it's back to you. So you got it. The great blue
Yep.
heron. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a great blue heron. Either that or it's a heron species. I don't recognize this bird
Oh,
in the
you're right. Yeah,
background,
it
which
might be a
looks to
gray
be
heron.
yeah. Yeah, it looks to be a stork of some kind, so
Yeah.
it may not be a U.S. bird. So I don't know if the person that's here, it's Tahir Abyss. I didn't see his name pop up, but very dramatic. It looks like it's got some cloud or fog here. It's coming out of the mist. Great pose. There's a couple issues just overall. One, if the quality of this was there, so this came to me at 800 pixels on the long side, which is not a lot to do. So I couldn't even really crop or play around with this. So hopefully the image was downsized and it was a larger file. If it was cropped down to 800 pixels from 6,000 or 5,000, that's a pretty heavy crop, and there's really not much you're going to be able to do. It's going to be really tough to print. So you can share it online, maybe get some reaction there, but it's probably limited to just sharing. If there's one bird here, if you're comfortable cloning, I would probably get rid of it. What I think would have been super cool is if there were a bunch of birds back here. So a bunch on the left, a bunch on the right, and then here's this big bird coming in the middle of the flock. I think that's a really kind of powerful look. But just having one other lonely bird, it kind of just detracts from the power of the pose in the middle. So just something to consider. I might, if you're comfortable cloning, I'd probably get rid of it. It doesn't really add much. But again, if there was a bunch back there, I think it could be super cool.
Nice. All right. Yeah, I agree with everything. I'm gonna hop back to mine real quick. I just have a couple more to hit. Here is one from Maud, and I don't know how to pronounce that last name. Sorry about that. Thanks for submitting. Great whitetail buck photo. Nice huge buck. I really like your composition here. So you left more space in the direction that he's looking. Lighting is nice. Background is pleasing. It's a little bit lighter back there, and I'm not sure if it's just natural that it was getting that bright back there. It almost looks maybe edited, but in any case, if it's natural, I think it still works. And I'm only saying it looks like maybe this was edited because kind of this area looks like a more neutral brown, and it kind of seems like it's on the same plane as all that stuff. So it almost looks like maybe you lighten this. So if you did lighten that, I would have said keep it darker, and then maybe just lighten the deer to make him stand out a little bit more, especially kind of the head area. But if it is natural the way, and that's just kind of how the lighting was there, then I think you're fine with it here. Not much more to say about this. Nice composition. He's definitely looking back at something interesting there, and yeah, any thoughts on that? Are you able to see it, Scott?
Yeah, you're talking about the buck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it, especially the composition. The grass, it doesn't really have like a golden feel to it. So I don't know if it could be warmed a little bit to kind of create that golden, when those dried grasses kind of get that nice light, they turn a certain color. But I really like the composition. It's a beautiful looking buck.
All right, cool. And I got one more. And if anybody, I apologize if you guys, I hear some people mentioning they lost the feed, so I apologize if you lost the feed. Hopefully you either get it back or you can just kind of watch the rest of this on the finished video that we'll post after the fact. So you had no more photos, right, Scott?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, all right. I'm just gonna hit last one here. Another one from Corey Nimmer. Looks like I'm gonna guess a piping plover chick. Definitely some kind of plover chick pulling on a worm here. So first thing, really cute bird, nice low angle. You got interesting bokeh in the background. The behavior is great, that it's actually pulling on this worm. That is all awesome. The one downside on this photo, I would say, is the lighting. So it's backlit, but it looks backlit at way too high of the sun. And in fact, you can see the shadow falling right below it here. And so I'm guessing that sun is up pretty high at that point. Backlit photos like this on the beach, you definitely want to do that within the first 15, 20 minutes, maybe half hour tops of sunlight before it starts getting really tough like this. Because now this side is really dark and the glow isn't that pretty, but it's still there. So I like everything you did with it, but it just looks like a tough lighting condition. The behavior you caught definitely helps to outweigh that, so I'm glad to see that. That's really a good thing. And anything from you, Scott? Or if not, I'll just move on. I got
No,
one more, I think.
yeah, no, I remember seeing this, and I 100% agree with the. It just the light was a little too strong for the backlight.
All right, cool. And let's see, another one from Phil Stolsteimer. Uh, nice, amazing rattlesnake in a great habitat here. I really like your composition. I would say maybe compositionally you could lose a little bit of the left here. I actually like the curve of this log kind of leading you right down into the snake there. Nice shallow depth of field. I'm not sure what the settings were, but they didn't come through. But your eye is really drawn to the snake here. The eye is really wild looking right there. I'm not sure if that's kind of just naturally how the eye is or if there's something going on with it. I'm not real familiar with reptiles and snakes, so I don't know if they kind of have a membrane that covers it sometimes, but it's pretty wild looking. And the lighting is really pleasing there. So I would say maybe these lighter areas of leaves, I would probably burn them down just a little bit, and then that would hopefully draw your attention into the snake a little bit more, and then maybe just lose a little bit off the left side there. Any thoughts on that, Scott?
You know what? I don't have the feed
No?
up, so
Okay.
I can't
Yeah.
see.
All
I
right. No
can't
worries.
see it.
All right. Cool. And then I just had one last one here that a photographer submitted. Yash, I'm not sure of the last name, submitted what looks to be some sort of lapwing. Not a great photo, unfortunately. There's not a lot good going on here. You have some really odd foreground sticks going on here. The angle isn't ideal for a wading bird like this. You definitely want to get a little bit lower perspective, and it's just kind of far away. So normally with something far away like this, if it's scenic, you want to have something really pretty involved here, and in this case you kind of don't. There's just some patchy grass in the foreground. The lighting isn't great, so on this one I don't have a lot of positive comments on this, but I did just want to kind of hit it real quick because you did thankfully take the time to submit, so I didn't want to ignore the photo there. So that's all we have for tonight, guys. Any other thoughts you want to add before we wrap things up, Scott?
No, I would just if I know we lost a lot of the. It looks like the feed got interrupted. So on the
Yeah.
live video replay, if anybody has comments or suggestions, just email Ray or send him a message. If you like the concept, it's something we thought about. Maybe every few months we could come back and do a live critique. But certainly we liked doing it. So if you enjoyed it, we'll do it again.
All right, cool. And then yeah, I think that's about it. So we'll wrap it up. Thanks so much, Scott, and
Yep.
we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Take care, guys.